everyone. I'm Heather Martinson, and today is session 9 of the Reignite Learning Training. Today we're going to be talking about enhancing math skills. But first, a follow-up from our assignment from the last session. And so I'm wondering if you were able to do some Alice in Wonderland themed writing activities with your kids. Did you talk about homophones? Alice ate tarts. Did you write some poetry? Did you try any of those Jabberwocky challenges? I'd love to see if any of your kids were able to do anything with the Jabberwocky, because I think it'd be a lot of fun for them, and I'm interested to see what they came up with. So you're welcome to share. I encourage you to share all of those things in our community so we can see what each other are doing and we can encourage one another. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So today we're talking about enhancing math skills, session 9. And 1 second. Sorry. So enhancing math skills is part of step 4 of the Reignite Learning System. So step 4 includes reading, writing, and math. We've already talked about reading and writing, so today is math. Something interesting about math is that, well, just like the other school subjects, standardized math curriculum stifles curiosity and creativity. And I think this might be a very different concept to understand. It's easy to understand how reading and writing can, if it's presented incorrectly, that it will stifle curiosity and creativity. But people don't often think about math in these terms. But I'm hoping that I can change your perspective today and help you learn more about how math can even spark curiosity and creativity. So this is a typical math problem that your kids have done all growing up in school or doing school at home. However, there's 5 apples and there's 10 apples. 5 plus 10 equals what? So, but the interesting thing is, and here comes the creativity and curiosity. That is assuming that 1 equals 1 to begin with. But 1 what equals 1 what? I mean, when we're talking about apples, there are no 2 identical apples. So this picture here shows 2 apples, and they're very similar, except for 1 is bigger than the other. And if you've ever had pie and more than 1 child, you're going to hear how there is a difference between this slice of pie and this slice of pie, and it's going to matter. So if your apples are not identical, then it's very difficult to say exactly how many apples there are, because does the little one count as a full apple, or is the big one more than a full apple? How does that work? And then going on even further, say we've got this setup of apples. There's 5 different apples, each of varying sizes, and then we've got a half apple, and then we've got a couple quarter apples. And how many apples do we actually have here? So these are some questions that this is very basic and very philosophical, but yet your children might be interested in coming up with an answer for these problems. And the thing is math, yes, can spark curiosity and creativity. What you might have one kid solving the problem one way and another kid solving this problem in a different way, and then they can discuss with each other why they believe it is this way and why they think they're right, or maybe they can change their mind if the other person has a different solution. But that will get them actually discussing and doing math in a very fun and interesting way. And that's just one way to go about having curiosity and creativity in math. Math is an expression, a beautiful and creative art form. It is with math that we understand the solar system and math. So that picture in the middle is something I never have any interest in, but those people who are very involved in math and love math, look, the chalkboard covered in numbers is beauty to them. And of course, there's lots of mathematical formulas in nature itself, and we can find the formulas that we write them out, but we can also observe them in nature. It was built that way. So even great mathematicians, they seem to have had a more creative approach to math. Einstein said he doesn't believe in mathematics. Yet he is considered one of the greatest mathematicians. But he himself even said that he's not he's not a mathematician. He also said pure mathematics is in its way the poetry of logical ideas. Poetry. Not many people would put math and poetry as synonymous. Isaac Newton, of course, the famous legend that the apple fell on his head and thereby he gained this curiosity for about gravity and he wanted to learn more about it. He created math, he studied and he worked to learn more about gravity and he used math to do it. So I also wanted to introduce to you The Mathematician's Lament by Paul Lockhart. In this story, he talks about reclaiming the joy and artistry that is inherent in mathematics. And he celebrates math as a deeply human and artistic endeavor. Isn't that interesting? There's just so much more depth to math than just a whole bunch of numbers on a paper or in a book, in a textbook or worksheet. So I'm going to introduce you to a few different new ways of looking at math. First of all, math does not have to be linear. As in, we tend to think of math as you do this, you learn this, and you go to this to learn this, and it's a step-by-step process you have to learn in that particular order. What's interesting is more and more math teachers are actually starting at the back of the book. They go and flip all the way to the back and teach the kids first how to do that last problem in the book, and then they go to the front, because then with that perspective and knowledge, it's a lot easier for them to learn all the things building up to that math problem. And it's a whole new way of looking at it, but it works for some kids. It actually works better than teaching it beginning to end. So another story that I want to share with you is about this incredible school in Massachusetts called Sudbury Valley School. At this school, they are what's called a democratic school, which means that every person at the school has a vote as to how the school run. Every person. That means the students and the teachers each get a vote in how the school is run. So as you may imagine, there are more students than teachers. So the students essentially are running the school. They get to decide what and when and how to learn. And they don't even have to learn. There are zero requirements placed on them except for what they place on themselves. So what's interesting about this is there's a story that something that happened at this school a few years ago, where some of the kids got together and decided that they want to learn math. And they were like young grade school all the way up through sixth grade. These are kids who had been at Sudbury for long enough that they hadn't been doing any math, any real math lessons. And some people might think that's tantamount to abuse, but these kids, they were thriving in different ways. So, but they wanted to learn math. And they asked the teacher, they said, I don't know if they call them teachers, but anyway, they asked the person, let's call them a teacher. They asked the teacher if they can learn math. They're like, I want to learn math. And the teacher's like, no, you don't. Math is hard. Nobody likes math. And they're like, yes, we do. Please, will you teach us math? And he said, well, if you want to learn math, I'm going to have a lesson at a certain time every week, and I'm going to give you homework, and you have to do every bit of homework. You have to pay attention the whole time I'm teaching. And he put all of these requirements on them. And he said, if you think you can do that, I will teach you math. And they said, yes, we will do that. And they did. They showed up every time. They were on time. They did all their homework. And guess what? In a matter of weeks, all of the children, all ages, all grades, they didn't do grades at this school, but basically all grades were taught within a matter of weeks to all the students. And that's because when they have the interest, when they have the drive, when they care about learning, it happens quickly. And this can happen to anybody. This can happen, well, unless you're developmentally delayed. This type of experience can happen to anybody, and it has happened to my own kids, and I'll share with you some of that. Simple things like give your child the opportunity to solve this problem. How many whales are on this page? How many are in the pink? How many are outside the pink? And let them figure out how to figure it out. Even maybe they want to circle sets. Maybe they want to just straight up count. There are many different ways to solve this simple problem. But let your children choose. how they're going to solve it. Turn it into a puzzle, turn it into something curious and something fun and interesting and something that they can be creative with. So, of course, we always do themes every year. And so the math is really the hardest thing to work into the themes, but we've been able to do it. And this kid right here was in one of our classes. We were talking about flight, and we talked about the forces of lift, thrust, weight or gravity, and drag. And we were giving the students numbers to plot on the chart and to determine whether or not an airplane could fly with these factors. And so he was 6. I don't know many people that even try to introduce this type of graphing to a 6-year-old, but he got into it. And it was because it was interesting. It was all part of flying. And then after this, we were flying paper airplanes. And so it's all part of the fun theme that we're doing. Then there's books. I love it when children have the opportunity to learn mathematical concepts through books. We've been doing medieval England, right? So this is a story set in medieval England called Circumference and the First Round Table. And as you might guess, this is about a circle, about the circumference of a circle. And it's been a while since I read this book, but it's fun. Children enjoy it and they understand the concept once they've read the book. So, and there's several other authors that write wonderful math books. These 3 by Greg Tang, I love these. One of the reasons, what I like about these books is similar to the Wales puzzle. These books introduce ways of doing math like that, like sets and this many sets plus this extra bonus, and you add that in, this kind of thing. And it's all kind of more like mental math of figuring out things on your own. But it's done in a way that guides them to come up with these little tricks adding in your head. So it's excellent. And then there's this Math Start series. I love this series because every single book it has levels. This one here is level 1, double the ducks. So it's going to be teaching young children about how to double numbers. So, and it's through a story. And by the time you read the story, the child understands the concept. On top of that, at the back of each of these books, there are some other activities that you can do with your child to make it even more solid. So, and they're not worksheets. These are real activities that you can do with your child to help them have more practice in doubling. It's wonderful. And these go through, I don't remember for sure, but look up this Math Start. There's a whole set and cover many grades, and look through them and find the ones that you want for your kids. I'm hoping you can find them in the library, but I actually went and bought these because I love them so much. So math is about problem solving. It's about patterns, and it's about creative expression. Some other ways that you can do these things is give your child puzzles to do, right? This is mathematical or logical thinking where the child can work on puzzles or play games with your kids. Even just a simple game of Monopoly. They're rolling dice, they're counting those numbers, they're handling the money, they're counting out the right amount, and there's a lot of figuring going on to play Monopoly. We played Monopoly Junior with our kids forever. And that was a lot of fun. And just making it an experience where you have fun and interesting learning experiences together. This was a small class of kids that were talking about Roman numerals. They were talking about Rome. And because of that, they did Roman numerals. And the kids were enjoying learning about different years and how they were 2015. That was probably the year that this picture was taken. And then comparing that to 1989 and what's the difference and how do you write it out in Roman numerals and so forth. And doing math problems with Roman numerals. It was just a lot of fun, and the children enjoyed it, and especially since they got to write on the wall. We had an entire chalkboard wall in that learning center. So, and of course, mind math. Even though I know a lot of people say you don't need to learn all the math anymore these days because everybody's got a calculator in their pocket. And that's true. I don't think it's necessary to learn all of the maths, like the higher maths, high school math is even less relevant today than it was when I was a kid. But there are people who will want to go into those fields that you're better off understanding those higher maths. So I'm not saying let's get rid of it. I'm saying let's focus on what the children are good at and help them strengthen those things. If it's math, go for it. Otherwise, let's help them focus on other things. But I don't know anybody that isn't helped and served by knowing a fair amount of mental math. And this is the math that kids do in their head, or we do in our head. The reason why this is valuable, because if you're doing something on the calculator and it comes up with an answer that's way off, maybe you forgot a zero, you didn't realize, and you want to make sure you in your head that it makes sense what the calculator is telling you, right? That you might not have an exact number, but you at least have an idea of a range that it should be within. So having that ability to do mind math is, I think, essential. And that all of these activities like the board games and the books, that Greg Tang's books, and also our fireworks, our downloadable fireworks, always have a mental math section to some ideas of things that you can do with your kids to help them practice their mental math skills. So you're going to watch for that. And I'm encouraging you to have your kids practice mind math. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be laborious. You can keep it fun and interesting and light, but encourage them. It's challenges, right? And even if they hate math, they might enjoy some challenges from time to time. Is this right? Can you tell me if I did this right? And that it might make more sense for them if they're like, if you're going grocery shopping, you take them grocery shopping and they want a certain something and you're like, oh, this is what our budget is, and they can do some mental math and make it up as you go if you need to. But I do encourage you to help your kids do math in their heads. So this is a story I want to share with you about my oldest child. When she was about 5th grade age, again, I didn't keep grades. I didn't like say, oh, this is what grade you're in, but you knew their age and what grades they were in. What she really struggled with math. And when as at the age that she would have been in 5th grade, she was still doing 3rd grade math because she hated it. She didn't want to have much to do with it. But nevertheless, I required something, a little bit of reading, a little bit of writing, a little bit of math every day. And the math that we chose at the time was Saxon math. And while I did not do any curriculum for any other subjects, I felt like we still needed a curriculum for math. So this is what I did. And going back, I wouldn't even do curriculum anymore. But Saxon is a fairly rigorous and demanding curriculum. There's a lot you need to do, and each day has 45 minutes worth of content if the child works on it straight beginning to end. But my oldest was working on it just a little bit at a time, and so taking 3 days to do what would have been 1 day, and that was okay with me. Just in the same way my son took until he was 10 to learn how to read, or to start reading, I should say, because he already knew. Anyway, but then with my oldest, our neighbor came home. He was older, and he came home with a pre-algebra book. And my oldest decided that she wanted to do pre-algebra. She wanted to show him up. She looked at his book and she's like, I can do that. And so, believing that math is linear, we went ahead and rushed through and finished the Math 3 book, or she did, finished the Math 3 book, then went and skipped Math 4, and then rushed through Math 5, skipped Math 6, and then started in pre-algebra. And guess what? Did just fine. This was a person who hated math, never wanted to see numbers, even as a preschooler, didn't even want to count, right? It was just something that had a hard time sinking in and became something that she feared and hated. But then, given the right challenge and the right environment, she chose to go ahead and do this. And this is a child that has by now graduated from college. So the fact that she waited so long to finally take an interest and learn and move ahead, just blaze ahead in math, it didn't hurt her. It didn't slow her down. It just meant that she learned at a different time, and that's okay. One more story I want to share with my second oldest. In the same year, in about 5th grade, was time to learn long division, but he was intimidated by it. he's my dyslexic, right? He was just like, this is too much. I can't do this. I don't want to learn it. And he skipped it. He just didn't want to do it. So he waited until he was 17 and he decided, I guess I should learn how to do long division. And so he taught himself and he's like, and that was it. And now, of course, this guy has also graduated from college by now. Again, him skipping something and waiting all the way until many years later for him to teach himself how to do this concept, it did not hurt him. It was just fine. He's okay. So math does not have to be linear. Children can learn any math at any time. And I just want to encourage you to enjoy the mathematical playground. Make it creative, make it interesting, make it fun, and let your child have their curiosity and enjoy that time playing and learning math. So let's go out of here. So let's see my notes. So for your math assignment, for this session, and sticking with the Alice in Wonderland theme, of course, the soldiers were playing cards, right? And so how about some games with playing cards? One that I like an awful lot is called Make 10, where the kids have the opportunity to make, right, explain it this way. It's like playing fish. It's like playing Go Fish. They have cards in their hand and they have to not find an identical card, but they need to find a card that will match their number and add up to 10. So if they have an 8, they're going to ask for a 2. And if they can make a 10, then they can lay it on the table in front of them. So it's a fun and simple game that helps introduce just simple addition and helps them think analytically and strategically. Also, another thing, of course, as you in Alice in Wonderland, Alice changed size many times. So it might be an interesting project to create things that were Alice's size, right? So you maybe estimate how tall she was when she was little and create maybe even a statue, a tiny little statue of little Alice. And then when she was huge, when she was bigger than a house, I don't think you can make a statue of tall Alice, but maybe what if you got a ball of string and measured out a length of string as tall as she was and see what that looks like. Guess how tall she was and then measure out that length. So, and then try, how about doing some math where what is the difference in her sizes from the tiny to her normal size to the super tall size, and what are those differences, and are you going to measure in inches or are you going to measure in the metrics or feet or however or yards, however you're going to do that and whatever makes most sense to the kids and help them enjoy experimenting with the size of Alice and also being creative how you're going to express that, right? So that's it for today. We're going to be talking about encouraging your child to follow their genius. We're going to talk about igniting genius. I'm super excited about it. It is really the point of everything that we're doing in Reignite Learning. So I look forward to seeing you in our next session. Thanks.